Welcome in. This is your Jock Market Power Hour for this week's Palmetto Championship. We are right in the thick of the IPO phase right now. Joe, good to see you, bud. What do you think about this week?
What's good, buddy? Hey, listen, I'm excited. I said earlier, I'm going to breathe some life into the Congaree. Everyone's, there may be some people taking a pass this week. But look, awesome golf course. Should be a delight to see on TV. Obviously, everyone's excited about Torrey Pines, but this should be a great test. We have a decent little field this week, but should present a ton of opportunities in the jock market. Am I right?
I've argued, and I've been waiting all week long for this show because I think this field and all of the unknowns, the perfect storm of having no course history, the week before a major championship, all the USO, the withdrawals, everything, it makes the best format jock market because I don't think this field is great or the perfect storm is great for outrights, Joe, because I think there's 5 or 6 guys who might win this golf tournament, right? And I think that in the jock market, all you're asking your players to do is beat their expectation. And some guys might be 40th. Can you finish 35th? Can you finish 29th? Things like that. So I think this is the absolute perfect format for this week.
Beauty. Great way to put it. Like you said, like we're paying out, everyone who makes the cut is going to pay out over $1 a share, and it's on a sliding scale spectrum from there. If you're new to jock market, welcome. We will do our best to sort of educate you through the process of this last electric 45 minutes that we have here until IPO close. It's exciting stuff, but you are right. Everything in terms of trying to find little tidbits to tip you on a guy here or there that may finish relatively unknown to some people, but may finish top 40 this week could present a ton of opportunity and ways to sort of build up that bankroll for next week.
These next 45 minutes are the final 45 minutes of the IPO phase. You are currently bidding on shares of golfers, and when the bidding is over, when the IPO window closes, the winning bids will be allocated those shares. And then depending on those share prices, of course, that will correlate to your final finishing position and how much money you can make. And speaking of money that you can make, Joe, we're giving away Jock Bucks as we continue to do. We have $100 to give away this evening. So make sure your Jock Market username is in the chat. That'll get you entered into the draw. And if that all wasn't enough, the deposit bonus has been raised. This, to me, Joe, is the best deposit bonus out there.
Yeah, 100%. So the reason that it's the best, first of all, to kind of explain it, so we dropped the sort of numbers. It's just straight up power. If you haven't joined Jock Market yet, enter that when you initially sign up and make your first deposit, and they're going to match whatever you deposit up to $50. So you deposit 20, they'll chuck you a free 20 spot. You go all the way up to 50, they'll give you 50. That's kind of where it stops. But like we had talked about before, there's no strings and no rollovers here. It's just straight cash right into your account that they are sort of funding you with to give you a little extra bankroll to kind of get you started and get the ball rolling in this thing that we have all kind of built this community around and found so fun.
Straight cash, homie. Straight cash, homie, is what Jock Market gives you. And before we turn the page to this week's Palmetto Championship, let's go back for just 1 second. This is the data from last week, and all of the data is available to you. It's RickRunGood.com. It's under PGA Tools. It's under Free Tools. You click it right here, and you can now download this information for all your research needs. And we saw, as we usually do, a couple of big movers inside the top 5. Notably Brandon Grace, who last Wednesday, Joe, went for $2.80, which means when he finished, I don't know what he finished, 4th, I believe, and paid out the full $16, you made $13 a share on Brandon Grace.
Yeah, it's awesome, right? There's these stories like Grace and like Jimmy Walker and like guys that just have these massive pops. But what's kind of so nice about this is really when you're down in this relative range of IPO target price, the downside is relatively minimal and the upside is huge. So like last week, for instance, if you remember, my portfolio wasn't great, right? A lot of, I think like 6 out of my 9 guys missed the cut. but I like broke even because I had a lot of shares of Max Homa. I had a lot of shares of Shane Lowry. They both ended up top sixing. So they didn't cash you a top 5 ticket. They didn't cash you an outright, but they ended up basically keeping my head above water in the jock market because they paid out a ton per share relative to what the IPO price went for. So it's a great platform for anyone who kind of understands how the stock market works and kind of wants to, portray that into golf.
Palmetto Championship. This is a brand new. I mean, I don't even want to call it brand new because it's really just a one-off event. It's not like we're going to be getting a series of these, but this is taking the spot of the RBC Canadian Open. It is being held at Congaree Golf Club. It is in South Carolina. And I think the course itself, Joe, is going to be a pretty significant storyline this week. It's a young course. It's only 4 years old. We don't know a lot about it. So guys like you and I have been trying to figure it all out over the past couple of days so that we can then translate that into the types of golfers that might have success here.
Yeah, I think it's a really fun golf course. It's unfortunate for them that it kind of showed up the week before a U.S. Open because it doesn't really share many of the characteristics that we're going to see next week at Torrey Pines. That said, I think it's going to present itself beautifully on TV. It's already ranked inside the top 50 of the Golf Digest 100 greatest courses. I think there's 2 members, a couple of billionaires that just
2 of them,
two members of this course. So they just built it basically to fly in their really rich friends on jets and play some golf every now and then. The PGA Tour makes it stop there. From what I've heard, Rick, it's obviously a very long par 71, one of the longest on record, but it's going to play so firm and quick, and they kind of made it to mimic these sort of Australian sandbelt courses that really run out, which kind of negates a little bit of that distance. And I think it's going to come down to hitting it far, hitting it in the fairway, and trying to sort of creatively navigate these newer green surfaces. I think is going to be key.
Yeah, what you just described of this course can play a lot shorter if you're in the fairway because there is one cut of grass. It is fairway. If you miss the fairway, you are in sand, which I don't know if you're familiar, Joe, doesn't always run out as well unless it's that hard pan stuff, but it's essentially fairway bunkers all over the place. Yeah. So being able to play in the fairway, even if they get some rain, that cuts this thing down a little bit, and they don't have to play it to the full scorecard yardage every single day. And it leads me to look at the approach shots and how receptive these greens are. And we know there's a lot of runoff areas. It's hard to hold these greens, which makes me start to believe that around the green, getting up and down for par, that's going to be a very important attribute for this week.
Yeah, it's Tom Fazio, right? And I love Tom Fazio courses, but he really challenges you on and right around the green surfaces. So like you mentioned, a lot of close runoffs, super undulating green surfaces. He typically has like a lower tier and an upper tier. So getting it on the right shelf is going to be paramount to getting it close. And like you said, coming from the fairway, and the further down you can hit it, especially on new greens, right? Something that's 3-4 years old, they tend to be a little bit bouncy and feel a little bit hollow to some degree. So being able to come in with a 9-iron versus a 7-iron is going to give you a huge advantage in terms of sort of holding that surface once you get on it.
The scorecard yardage is scary. As I mentioned, 7,655 yards. And I think what a lot of people want to do, Joe, is immediately say, well, you got to be a bomber, which obviously helps every single week. But are we just straight rolling out guys like Kevin Kisner, Ian Poulter, maybe some of the shorter hitters in the field, or are they still live this week?
For me, I'm not ruling anyone out this week because it's really hard to say without any statistical database or years worth of stats to kind of go upon. So there's things, obviously, like you mentioned, distance is always going to be a big advantage, but you're going to have to be very sound, I think, in a lot of different areas of your game. So if you're not the longest, like a Kisner or like a Poulter, then you have to be really locked in on your approach plays, and you got to putt well. Like, it's the PGA Tour. It's ultimately going to come down to a sort of a putting contest like we see most weeks.
The field. because I don't know if the right term is top heavy, weak, terrible, awkward. I don't know what the word is, but we have two big boys at the top. Their names are Dustin Johnson and Brooks Koepka. It's very clear they're the two best players in this field, but we were talking before we went hot. They don't provide a lot of stability on any given week, right? I mean, Dustin Johnson hasn't played particularly well since February. Brooks Koepka outside of major championships. You think about the knee, you don't really know what to expect. I mean, what do we think about these two big boys at the top who aren't the most consistent golfers on the face of the earth?
For me, it's likely, depending on the price as we get closer here, Rick, and I kind of saddle up and get in the trenches and see where these guys are at, it's likely going to be a pass on both of them. Look, these are two titans, but they're volatile, like in a sense that we haven't seen really from other guys like Jordan and Bryson and these guys who tend to be safer. DJ, it's really hard to predict what he's going to get. And Brooks, obviously off of a couple weeks, is taking a little bit breather, and we know it's all systems go for the U.S. Open, right? He wants to get there. He's ready to tackle Bryson. He's ready to tackle the course. So it's hard to overlook how well he's playing, though, because statistically, I think he comes like if you don't actually look at the stats, he's phenomenal. But it doesn't necessarily feel like that because he doesn't play that often, right?
Yeah.
But if you even go back to like his last 24 rounds, pretty much everything's in the top 10, right? Tee to green, number 1, ball striking, number 1, short game, number 7, off the tee, 6, approach 6, putting 7th. Like he's doing everything as well as he's ever done it. It's just we don't see him that much. So it's just a tough call on him this week on whether he brings a full tank of energy and focus to an event the week before a major. That's the only question mark for Brooks.
Fair enough. Well, let's not waste any more time in getting into the big board. And let's not waste any more time in giving out some of our Jock Bucks. So the very first $20 goes out to Shane at War Eagle 82. We'll get you all set up with that. I'll send your name over to the Jock Market team so they can credit your account. Congratulations. And if you would like to be entered into a draw for 20 Jock Bucks, you know what to do. Drop your username in the chat right now. That will get you in the draw. And it's time to reveal the big board. This is our live dashboard into the current Jock Market pricing. I don't think there is any surprise to see Brooks Koepka $7.77 as currently our most expensive golfer, with Lucas Glover right behind. Glover, Joe, is one of these golfers who has played this course. He's been very vocal about that. The putter's starting to come around. I imagine he is going to be incredibly popular in all golf formats this week.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Has great course history here to match, or not great course history, but he has some knowledge of the course, I should say. Match that, pair that with the recent form. I did see somewhere that I think he withdrew today during the Pro-Am. Do you put any stock into that, or is it just something you're writing off?
So I thought I saw that too. And sometimes it is dependent on the reason, although sometimes these guys give BS reasons, and also know that the Pro-Am, they had bad weather today. They ended up canceling the Pro-Am or suspending it. So it could have been a lot of things. It could have been that he wasn't feeling well, something was injured, that he didn't want to play in the rain. I mean, it's I generally do not, but if it is something like a stomach bug, which is the rumor that I heard, and I have not confirmed that myself, I would probably want to wake up tomorrow morning and confirm before his tee time. I'd have to see what time his tee time is. I
know, like the whole Rahm situation has me like now leery of like these guys who are like a little bit sick again. But yeah,
and unfortunately, he doesn't tee off until the afternoon, so we're not going to know.
We're not going to know. No, we'll have no idea. But yeah, the guys right into there. Poulter's been playing really well. Sungjae Im, I think, sets up. You know, he was the one guy kind of on the lower end of the betting board this week that I put a little bit of stake in. I like his around the green game. I think that the really wide fairways is going to help him. I feel like with the eye test of when I see him, his irons and his tempo and his rhythm looks really good. But then when I look at the stats, it's not necessarily bearing out. But that could just be one or two really bad holes around. I think that he's close, and I think that his talent level and his ceiling is potentially victory. Interesting that DJ is way down there. We usually have kind of a weird, DJ's usually not the most popular guy in the jock market that we've seen, even as he's still world number one. He ends up not finishing at the top of this board a lot. We'll see where he shakes out this week.
He has only cracked, the $10 mark 4 times in his 11 cash markets, which is kind of crazy because he's been the number one player in the world for the entirety of that stretch. I mean, to put this into perspective, currently at $4.59, he would have to finish 38th or better to return you cash, which is something Dustin Johnson certainly capable of doing. But I imagine that is not going to stay at that number very long. I imagine by the time this IPO phase is over in about 30 minutes, we're going to have Brooks at the top, we're going to have DJ at the top, and then I think the rest of it is going to be incredibly interesting on how it shakes out. Yeah,
I think we'll see a couple of our European Tour friends are up there, and Matty Fitz and Tyrrell Hatton should kind of make a decent run. But yeah, after that, it seems like it's wide open, right?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is we're going to learn again, and I've said this before. The jock market is the perfect put your money where your mouth is sentiment. We're going to learn who's popular this week tonight because we're going to see who is getting bid up on. I mean, you go down, you mentioned Ian Poulter, you mentioned Sung J M. Brant Snedeker is threatening the $5 mark. Vincent Whaley, who I guess is just a cut making machine, he's going to finish between 20th and 35th, is threatening $5. Then you get some more interesting names, Joe. Keith Mitchell, Luke List. I think that these are guys that you would describe as plenty of firepower if they can kind of control the direction that it's going in.
Absolutely. You made a great point that I hadn't really thought about you miss the fairway and you're in the sand and you're not getting nearly as much run out. So that is a bit more concerning than I was initially going to take on with a guy like Mitchell and List. That said, we know Keith Mitchell plays his best on Bermuda grass. He hasn't finished poorly, but had that good stretch a couple of weeks ago. Luke List, from what I've heard, holds the course record at Congaree, which is, a nice little tidbit, which may be factoring into his IPO price being up there now. But 2 guys who hit it a long way, both really underrated around the green and short game players. And if they can just find a decent putter one week, I think that they have the all-around game if they can complement it with a hot putting week to potentially win.
Brooks Koepka is making moves, $8.29. He's our first golfer through the $8 mark. If you're an investor of Brooks Koepka at that mark, you are asking him to finish essentially 16th or better in this golf tournament. Now, Joe, we did get a big move since the last time I refreshed, and it's on the Englishman, Tommy Fleetwood. And speaking of underrated around the green games, Fleetwood is currently in the midst of his best around the green year of his career. Now, the ball striking hasn't always been Tommy-esque, and we know he's still looking for that first victory here in the States.
Yeah, I think for me, okay, so I think it's going to come down to Tommy on a little bit how you think the course is going to play. I like Tommy Fleetwood if you think that it's going to play hard. He's great at U.S. Opens. He's typically good when the Masters plays pretty hard. He's good at Open Championships when the scoring average is on the difficult side. But I don't know if you have an inclination one way or another after sort of diving into the course this week on whether we see 20 under in a birdie fest or whether you think, it's going to play at that 8 to 12 under par, which I think suits Tommy's game the best.
I think it's going to be harder than most people believe. Maybe 16 under, 15 under. The issue is it's very exposed. So it's going to be dependent on how windy it gets. And also there are thunderstorms in the forecast, essentially Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if it gets wet, it's going to play a lot easier. So I don't think it's going to be the firm, fast Australian sandbelt course that they want, where it would be, 7 under par. That's what they want. That's the ideal. Yeah. I don't think we're going to get that this week. I think it's going to be 15, 16 under that gets the job done.
Yeah, that's kind of where I fall. It's their first PGA Tour tournament. They're not going to set it up to sort of make these guys just grind it away the week before a U.S. Open.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I sit on it. But yeah, I think that Tommy, like you mentioned the around the green numbers, I had no idea he'd been that solid there.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. I think so. I do it by year and I do it by season. So if you look at his season rank, I believe he's fourth on tour this year, but or fourth on tour this season, but it's his best year ever for him. Going a little bit further, we still have Matt Fitzpatrick and Terrell Hatton both hanging on at $4.20. Now, these are two of, I don't know, the 4 or 5 favorites in this field, and they're hanging at $4.20. I can't imagine they are going to stay there for long. But how do we feel about these two trying to break through? I mean, Matt Fitzpatrick's never won on the PGA Tour. Hatton, I believe, his only victory was Bay Hill, and he's got a couple of international victories as well.
Yeah, Hatton definitely. Both of these guys have seemed to find a winning pedigree across the pond, but are sort of waiting, and we've been waiting on Fitz for a while. He's really good off the tee, believe it or not. I actually have him rated out number 1 in the field over the last 24 rounds, which was surprising to me because you usually, when I think of Fitz, I'm like, oh, he's going to do it all with the putting, right?
He has not lost strokes off the tee this calendar year.
That's incredible. I know that he plays a lot at the Bears Club down here, which is really firm, really wide open, really fast, Bermuda grass. Maybe this could be the week that he finally breaks through. If you look at it if you think maybe DJ and Brooks have the private jets waiting on Friday night to catch an early flight to the West Coast in La Jolla, he's the next guy on the board, right? So maybe this is a great spot for him to sort of notch that victory that he's long been looking for.
If you think about the courses that he's top 10 or technically top 11 in the last couple of seasons, couple of months, I mean, he did it at Muirfield Village. He did it at Olympia Fields. He did it at Bay Hill. He did it at the Concession. He did it at Sawgrass. He did it at Riviera. I mean, these are tough courses. This is not Matt Fitzpatrick doing it at, Birdie Fest. And I think this plays, again, 15, 16 under, it's going to be a lot weather dependent. This could be a really good spot for him. And Joe, I think, maybe no surprise, Brooks Koepka continues to climb. $10.
$10. Wow.
He just snapped through it. So $10 for Brooks Koepka, essentially asking him to finish 12th or better. I think the public is saying there are not 2 big dogs in this field. There is 1 big dog, and his name is Brooks Koepka, because that's the way the money's rolling in right now.
I actually took a little piece of a matchup with Brooks over DJ this week and took Brooks. So did I. You did as well? Awesome. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad. Anytime I'm with Run Good, I feel good about it. $10 though, like I can't get there the week before a major. Like at this point, I'm just gonna have to kind of look elsewhere. I think that, it's a big mark, but you have to figure what does his finish position have to be in order to pay that out positively?
12th.
Okay, so he's got to finish 12th or better. Could he do that? Yes. Could he miss the cut? Yeah, I think there's a good chance he could miss the cut this week, and that goes all the way down to $1. So you start at 10, you can go all the way down to 1, and the scale really tips on a victory at 25. So you got to have to kind of weigh that out. For me, I'm trying to, still evolving my strategy in Jock Market, but I think that the value really comes in that sort of, I'll say $4 to $7 range is where I've kind of found the sweet spot recently.
Speaking of value, there's a really good question here from Colin, who says he appreciates the Jock Bucks last week. All good. Have you guys looked into IPO price versus top 10, top 20, etc. odds that you can get at sportsbooks? Now, Joe, you are you're the guy who goes out, and I think you do more research than probably anybody in the Jock market, and you create your own fair value, rankings and all that good stuff. And I assume that the odds makers numbers are a large portion of that.
Yes. I always kind of understand. Look, part of betting is you gotta always respect the power of the sports book and understand that you're always playing catch up against them, right? You can try to find opportunities that exist, but they're really good at this. So absolutely, Colin, to answer your question, I factor in the top 10, the top 20 price. If I see, basically, I will take their fair projected value price, and I'll try to find if that matchups and if that aligns with where the sports books odds are. Then I'll do some tinkering on my own based on sort of my own projections. But 100%, I think that that's a fantastic way to look at it. If you're looking at guys at the top of the board, weigh out their price versus their top 10 odds. If you're looking at guys in the middle, do it top 20. If you're looking at guys down low, check out their top 40 odds and their percentages there that you can get from various sites. So I think that's absolutely a fantastic way to attack this if you're looking for sort of long-term success.
I think the DJ fans said, not so fast. We'll back DJ because now he's making movies up to $8.88. So those two certainly clear of the rest of the field. And Ian Poulter is third here, $6.06. We kind of breezed over him. Joe, Poulter to me is the guy that I'm having the most difficult time with this week. I understand he's been playing well. I know that he relies a hair on the short game more than I would like. I know that he doesn't necessarily hit it as far as I would like, but you talk about pedigree, you talk about an Englishman coming over, playing a kind of a Linksy style course that you can play on the ground. Every pro I can outweigh or offset with a con, and every con I can offset with a pro, and I'm stuck in the middle, not knowing what to do with him.
He's kind of hard to peg, right? Obviously a big bump that we saw there in his performance at the Charles Schwab, competed pretty well at the PGA Championship at the Ocean course as well. So the form is there. That said, I don't think he's deserving of being the third price guy on the board. I don't think that will end up that way either. There are certainly some shortcomings in his game that he has to overcome with great play around the greens and great putting, but that's what we see when he's playing well. He tends to do quite often. Another thing that we always talk about that you have to definitely factor in when you're sort of ranking guys is, you look at the top 10 and the top 20s, but pay attention to that projected rank that they will have next to your guy. So Ian Poulter is 11th here. That's essentially what breaks all ties in the jock market. So if Ian Poulter ties this week with Sung J M and Tommy Fleetwood, and they all finish in a tie for third, Sung J is going to pay out the most, followed by Tommy, followed by Poulter. So that is a big factor to kind of weigh out when you're looking at guys like you see Higo down there is a great example. I think a lot of people really like Higo this week. His projected rank is so low just because we don't have enough data of him on the PGA Tour yet where they pull these rankings. So it's going to be tough in an instance where he could finish in a massive tie to really have anyone, end up with a higher price than him.
Very excellent point there by Joe. Let's give away some more money. $20 in the jock market this time is going to Mike. Congratulations, Mike B. We will get your username over to the jock market team. And if you are looking for 20 jock bucks, make sure that your username is in the chat. Joe, we are about 15 to 18 minutes away from this market closing. It's heating up a little bit, but let's go down and look at those golfers that are going to end in that range that you're excited about, ending in that $4 to $7. So I'm kind of looking at guys who are 5 and under right now, assuming they are going to be working their way up. You mentioned Garrick Higo, the left-handed South African, $4.14. Unfortunately, that 113 pre-rank does not help him in any tie situation. Patton Kizzire, a guy who has 2 third-place finishes in his last 3 starts, is currently at $4.01. Hank Lebioda, I know, catching plenty of steam this week. Are any of these names or any of their peers around them moving the needle for you?
Absolutely. So a couple of guys there. I like Kevin Kisner this week. I just think that I like his attitude, right? And I feel like this could be a good setup for him. Being in South Carolina, if he can get the putter going, there's a lot of parts of his game that are working right now that aren't always the most reliable for him. The putter has always been, it's like second nature to him, putting well, and he hasn't had that going well lately. Hank Lebioda, you mentioned, has had some really fantastic returns of late. I'm just looking here at the Valspar ROI of 418% at the Valspar, Wells Fargo 64.9%, AT&T Byron Nelson 211%. All data that I'm getting from your website and the free tools there. Patton Kizzire has been one of the most profitable guys in the jock market that doesn't have a huge spike victory, right? We see the Robert Shrebs and the KH Lees that kind of rate out there because they got that massive bump from a victory. Patton Kizzire, 17 jock markets he's entered in, hasn't won a tournament. He's averaging 72% return every time you play him. Like, the numbers are kind of astonishing for Kizzire, and he just continues to sort of carry form.
I kind of really like Kizzire this week. I mean, he can get hot with the irons. The putter he has figured out. He's gaining strokes putting nearly every single week. And yeah, he's $5.50 at the moment, which essentially you're asking him to finish, 31st or better. And I'm shocked at the very generous pre-rank, 7th. There are only 6 other golfers that are not going to win the tie for Patton Kizzire. So I'm sold. Further down the list, you get a couple of this is where we start to get into, and I would love your take on these guys, the Korn Ferry guys and the college guys, right? Mm-hmm. So John Pock, $3.45. Florida State kid making his first professional start. Davis Thompson also making his first professional start. You have guys who live mostly on the Korn Ferry, like a David Lipsky. What are we doing with these types of golfers who we do not see on the PGA Tour on a regular basis?
Okay, so starting with Pock and Thompson, I think that they are, in terms of a lot of people in the community, I think they're relatively well-known games. I mean, Pock has had one of the most decorated colleges careers we've seen since basically Matt Wolff, right? A ton of victories there. But is their popularity and sort of that initial buzz and name recognition going to outweigh the outcome? Like, we've seen it work really well for Morikawa and Wolf, and we've seen the disaster stories, right? We've seen the Panda and these other guys that just haven't been able to pan out. I'm more, I think, looking at the Korn Ferry Tour guys. I think Lipsky, these guys that are used to playing 4 events of professional golf. Peter Uline's another one that I think is really sneaky, and I have on my short list this week. Really good around the greens, really good out of the sand, and hits it a surprisingly far way. He's averaging like 307 off the tee and relatively accurate. So he's had a great run going on the Korn Ferry Tour. Good finish at the Zurich. So those numbers aren't showing up here on your data, but I see them in my head. So I like Peter Uline this week is another one I'm looking at.
Uline, Seamus Power. Power's coming off a top 10. He hasn't played on the PGA Tour, I think, in 3 weeks, but coming off a top 10. Yeah, those are certainly guys that I'm interested in. There was a question in the chat that I thought was good while I refresh my refresh my big board here. So Greg would like to know, as a strategy, do you bid on guys you would use in DFS lineups, or do you hedge, the old life hedge, and bid on guys that you couldn't get into your lineups? This is always a fun question.
I know, and it's hard for me, right? Like, usually, theoretically, I want to say if you like a guy, you should like him everywhere. But you have to, like, separate yourself a little bit from it. And, like, I use the analogy that I used to always talk about, like football betting. Like, don't bet the team, bet the number, right? So a lot of times their outright odds don't align with their DraftKings price, which doesn't align with Jock Market. So, you know, it's all about trying to isolate value. This stuff is so hard to kind of pick winners that if you can get a couple extra points and you see a spot where they may present a little bit of value on one place versus the other, I don't mind going totally different with my DFS lineups than I did for Jock Market. I start off with the same sort of criteria and pool of players that I'm looking to isolate, but that can totally change based on numbers.
Yeah, I think in most DFS formats or outright, like, I'm kind of looking for upside. I'm looking for like the ceiling week to try to hit it big. I think the Jock Market is one of the few places where I'm like, okay, like, can this guy who is ranked 40th finish 25th? Like, can I get a couple, you know what I mean? Like, it's just
Great
different. Point. You're just trying to find, I think, smaller edges is kind of the way that, but there's more of them. I think there's more smaller edges available. Mm-hmm. Let me give away 20 more bucks here, and thank you for the question, Greg. I'll give away 20 now, 20 after this IPO closes, and then 20 at the end of the show. And this one is for Davis. Davis, we will get you all, or Devin Davis, excuse me. We'll get you all set up with that $20. And of course, I've got 2 more to give away. One around 9 p.m., one around 9:15 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure that your username is in the chat. Helps me very much. Okay. Also, hit the like button. Wow, we went 35 minutes. I asked you that for the first time. The market, Joe, it's normalizing. We are seeing what we would expect. Brooks Koepka over $10. Dustin Johnson right behind. Terrell Hatton, Matt Fitzpatrick, Sung J M, Lucas Glover. This is very much now getting more reflective of what the Vegas odds are. The only one that I think, what do you think the biggest difference is? Fleetwood? Because he was probably like the fifth shortest odds, something like that. He's still sitting around at $6. Is that the biggest difference we have at the moment?
Yeah, that's the one that I see that sticks out the most is sort of Fleetwood being down there, a good $1.50 below Fitzpatrick and Hatton. Look, Tommy's so good. Just hasn't had a knack for closing, and like we've spoken about many times, doesn't necessarily matter in this environment. So you finish second, you finish third, they're still going to pay out $20 and $18 a share. So there's still a ton of room there on a guy like Fleetwood, who you mentioned has a lot of these successful attributes that should correlate to a good success rate this week.
I've got a flavor of the week here. Am I wrong to say that Ben Martin is a flavor of the week? He's catching some steam. He doesn't have a lot of strokes gain data recently. In fact, 3 of his last 7 events did not have shot link data, so we don't know how he's doing it. But in the events that he's struck it very well. 26th at the Byron Nelson, 11th at the Wells Fargo Championship. He's currently sitting at $4.10, which would be asking him to finish about 41st, Joe. Can Ben Martin finish inside the top 40?
Yeah, I think so. If you look at that correlated to his betting number this week, which is typically anywhere between like 55 and 70 to 1, then that success rate is pretty good. We'll see if he gains some steam over the next one. I have a guy that we like, and I want to ask you about, because I know you're a big fan as well. Let's talk about Doc for a second. Are we ready? Like 3 straight events, gaining strokes on approach, not awesome finishes, but like, can he go here? Like back around South Carolina where he played in college ball?
I'm this close on Doc. We're getting there. We're getting there. So when 2021 started, he seemingly lost everything. I mean, it was ugly stuff. And the putter was really poor. Well, he's fixed that. He's putting, I think he's gained strokes in 3 straight and a good amount. He's putting well again. His iron game has come around. I'm loving it. The one thing that's left is the driver. Don't quote me on these numbers, but I think he lost 3 strokes off the tee at the Memorial. I think he lost like 4 at Charles Schwab, and that is not his game. He is very much like, get him on a narrow course, tree line fairways, let him pipe it down the middle. And I think that's the only thing that has to come around. So if he can fix that, I think we are back on Doc. So we talk all the time about, do you want to be early? Do you want to be late? I'm starting to about to be early on Doc. I think it's coming together.
I'm close as well. I look at him like the names that are kind of around him right now, and Laird and Neesmith, and I'm thinking like at the start of 2021, like we would have thought that Doc was like a potential breakthrough candidate of the year and like going to be a guy that's consistently top 20. We haven't seen it. I think he went down the route of maybe chasing a little bit of distance, but I'm starting to see signs and things align where he's doing the things well that we were used to him doing well in the fall. We'll see where his price ends up. We know this next 5 minutes here. So the IPO, closes anywhere between 857 and 859. So it can happen anytime. This last 5 minutes is a flurry of activity in the jock market. So we'll kind of see where he pans out.
Yeah, that's right. We're about in that time period, right? So this is going to close 4, 5, 6 minutes from now. If you're new, what we do is we bid adieu to Joe. We say, okay, go do your thing. He goes, he makes all of his bids, and then we see what shares he got afterwards as I talk us through the final couple of minutes. So Joe, for those who are new, you've been keeping an eye on the market all day long, seeing how it's been panning out. And spoiler alert, we've got 2 golfers now over $10. Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson have just smacked through that mark. Are you going to try to live in that range? You gave us a warning about that $4 to $7 range for this week.
Yeah, I think this week more than most, I may steer a little bit more clear of the top just because there's more questions surrounding it for me. There's not a lot of guys up there with course history. There's the added factor of the U.S. Open next week. So I think I'm going to try this week to kind of stick and make my hay in the sort of $4, $5, $6 range and see if I can find anything that lines up with the target price that I have here and fire away over the next couple of minutes.
All right, fire away, Joe. Go at it, my friend. There are probably 3 to 5 minutes left in this IPO phase. So you are currently bidding on shares of golfers. And when this IPO phase closes just before 9 p.m. Eastern time, those shares are going to be allocated. As I speak right now, Brooks Koepka is our most expensive golfer, but not by much. He's $10.02. Dustin Johnson, $10 a share. That is essentially asking both of them to finish 12th or better to break you even. And of course, they will pay out accordingly for every spot above and below that. There is a definite second tier of golfers. It includes Matt Fitzpatrick and Tyrrell Hatton, both at $8.08, and Sung Jae Im at $7.88. That's the clear second tier. The third tier is kicked off by Tommy Fleetwood, and this is where things really get jam-packed here. There's not much separation between Tommy and the next handful of golfers. Tommy's $6.77. Lucas Glover, $6.75. Harold Varner, who's been moving up the board as we've been on air, $6.60. Down in the $5 range, Alex Noren leads that area. He's $5.96. And there's a 50-cent gap down to Kevin Kisner. Brant Snedeker and Luke List have been catching steam along with Seamus Power. They're all above $5. And our best friend, Vincent Whaley, who has just continued to make cuts, continues to finish inside the top 30, currently sitting at $5.14. As of this moment on my clock, it is 8:56 Eastern time, which means we are in, I think we're almost in it. This IPO phase could close anytime in the next few minutes. So you're going to want to get your bids in right now. And I'm going to give this big board a refresh so that we're all on the same page about the current pricing. And what I see is, a big jump from our friend Dustin Johnson, who has now ascended to the top of the jock market. He is currently our most expensive golfer. He's the number one pre-ranked golfer. So he is going to break all ties. Joe just looked up and went, which I thought was interesting.
I'm surprised, man. 1040. That's as much as we've seen him, right?
That is the most expensive he has been since Genesis, since February. So Dustin Johnson breaking new ground. Brooks Koepka, $10.06. Tyrrell Hatton has extended from Matt Fitzpatrick, and he is $9 even. Tyrrell Hatton discussed maybe a little bit of rust in his game this week, but that could just all be talk. Sung Jae Im and Matt Fitzpatrick both at $8.55, and they're lining up at $7. $7 even for Lucas Glover, Ian Poulter, Tommy Fleetwood, Harold Varner III, all sitting at $7. If they finish at that price, you'll be asking them to finish 22nd or better, and it would be Harold Varner who would break ties out of that group of golfers. It is now 8:57. We are in the time frame where this IPO phase can close at any moment. We are going to get a word from Joe when it finally does, but as of now, it's open. Garrick Higo, $5.25. Luke List right behind him, $5.20. Pat Perez even making a move into the $5 market. If you scroll further down the board, those names that we mentioned, John Pock, Hank Lebioda, $4.06, $4.04. They are hanging around that number essentially all day, and Ben Martin hasn't moved much. He has $4.23. I'm going to try to get one more refresh in here and see if I can do that before this jock market closes.
We're still open at the moment.
You're still open at the moment. This seems like a late close. We're going to see. Oh, my goodness. The big boys, everybody wants shares. Brooks Koepka, $11.66. Dustin Johnson, $11.50. We have smashed the record on Brooks Koepka, by far the most expensive he has ever been. Dustin Johnson at $11.50 is the most expensive he has been almost ever since the Century Tournament of Champions. That was the only time he was more expensive, $11.55. Tyrrell Hatton, I'm assuming this is the most expensive Tyrrell Hatton has ever been, $9.17. It's not. He was $9.35 when he defended his crown at the API. Sung Jae Im closing in on the $9 mark. He's $8.99. That is the most expensive he's been since he's defended. Well, what if we just learned that defending champs are very expensive in the jock market? Are we still open?
We're still open, dude.
This is unbelievable.
It's still live.
We might see one of these big boys break through the $12 mark. I got to refresh it one more time. And it can't be open much longer. I've got not 8:59 by my clock. This thing is arguably the latest close we've ever had. I think we might have just closed. The chat thinks we might have just closed.
Okay. Yeah.
Are we closed?
It's showing closed. Yeah, it's not letting me put in shares. Yeah, so we're closed.
Shut it down. We are closed.
Wow.
That was long. It was late.
Nice. That was a long close, no doubt about it. And we saw a ton of. I'm surprised at the amount of action that we saw right up at the top. Right? I wasn't really seeing that this week. It wasn't for me, but apparently a lot of you guys didn't mind going up there.
I'm going to refresh this because I saw a big number and I want to make sure that I have the final numbers here before I start to share them. So let me give this one more refresh, Joe. But I'm seeing, yeah, okay. So here we go. So I believe these are the official numbers. Brooks Koepka is $12.25, which I'm going to check this out right now. This has got to be very close to the most expensive we've ever had. Okay, this is now the fourth golfer ever to break through the $12 mark. John Rahm was $12.51 at Waste Management. Webb was $12.50 at Sony. Patrick Cantlay was $12 at Pebble. And now Brooks Koepka, $12.25, just became the third most expensive golfer, Joe, ever in the jock market.
Crazy. I think that, yeah, like we had mentioned, so many things are lining up really well for Brooks. It's just like the question of motivation a little bit with Brooks, which is really hard to read into, like to try and sit here and play psychiatrist or whatever you want to call it. So, but at the same token, he's basically got to finish like 8th or better in order to pay that out. I think that it's a risky endeavor. But yeah, I'm a little bit taken back by how high that price closed.
Dustin Johnson at $11.50 is the second most expensive he has ever been. He was $11.55 at the Century Tournament of Champions. So when we came on air, I was saying maybe there were some concerns about DJ. I guess not. people went out and put their money out there for him.
Yeah.
Do you think it's just because people said this is very, very much two horses at the top? I better make sure I get one of them.
Yeah, it's not often when you get one of these, I think Brooks and Dustin, we can all say, are like probably both in the top 6 players in the world. So it's not often that you get them in an event with really one other big name. And then there seems to be a little bit of a drop off there. So I think that had some added to it where he doesn't have to go through Rory and JT and Bryson and all these other guys to get victory. He maybe has to defeat Brooks and play pretty well. And if he finds himself into contention, it's all eyes on Dustin Johnson on the weekend or vice versa.
Before I forget, let me give away $20 more to the jock market. And I've already pulled the name and I'm just looking for the comment to see if I can find it. Here we go. Ingve 14, Aaron, congratulations. We will get you all set up with that. And I've got one more $20 Jock Bucks credit to give away. We'll do that at the end of the show. So make sure your username is in the chat. Now, Joe, it is that time where I ask you, sir, how did the jock market go for you? Who did you end up getting? How was that very late close for you?
Yeah, so I kind of stuck to my guns here a little bit and went with the guys in my range. So the highest priced guy that ended up in my portfolio, so to speak, this week is Keith Mitchell. Okay. So $5.88 was the cost per share that I paid on Keith Mitchell. It looks like he finished right around like 15th or so in terms of total price and where the other guys were. So I was targeting Keith this week. I think that a lot of his attributes should set up nicely. Moving down at the $4.90 range, I got a couple of shares of Doc Redman, picked up 10 shares of Doc. So I'm going to try and be early on him. We'll see how that pans out for me. I did take a big stake. So this is one of the bigger ones that I have. 37 shares of Peter Uihlein. So I'm pushing a lot of chips on the Uihlein bandwagon. Never usually works out well, but we'll see how it happens this week. $4 a share Peter went for. I thought like it was a fair price. Look, he's the type of guy that I'm like, man, all the motivating factors are line up this week if you sort of buy into that kind of stuff, where he was a young, up and coming, like a great college player, came out guns a-blazing on the PGA Tour and kind of got smacked in the face, right? He got knocked backwards. He's worked his way back through the minor leagues, so to speak, in the Korn Ferry Tour, been playing well there. And now it's like, okay, like for him, you have to be looking at this like this. It is what it is. It's a great opportunity for me to secure a PGA Tour card where the field isn't that loaded, where a lot of guys may be looking to next week, but this is a great spot that I have circled on the calendar.
I can tell you one guy who's not looking forward to next week. It's Peter Uihlein, because he is trying to earn that card. He's trying to earn that job. He is trying to do all that stuff. I saw he won out here in Vegas on the Korn Ferry. I guess at this point it was like 2 months ago. He looked phenomenal. He really hasn't slowed down since. I mean, he's played a little bit on the PGA Tour to varying levels of success, but he's been splitting time, and I like his game a lot. So Joe has Keith Mitchell, Doc Redman, and a large stake in Peter Uihlein this week. What else you got?
Okay, so a couple of shares at like 410 of John Pack. So I just kind of want to see what happens with this. It's basically betting on him to top 40. So I'm just kind of interested to see how his game lines up against these guys on the PGA Tour. Another one that I really like this week, and I made an outright bet on him at like 125 to 1, Patrick Rodgers. So I just really like his around the green game. He's a great underrated Bermuda grass putter. He just lapped the U.S. Open qualifier at the Bears Club down here and won by like 3 or 4 strokes. So he's in the U.S. Open, where he's played really well at Torrey in the past. So I think that this confidence level is there with Patrick Rodgers, another guy who sort of burst onto the scene with some good finishes early and now has had to kind of work his way back. I think that a chance like this to catch a victory and secure yourself more long-term on the PGA Tour is big for him. And then finally, 295, the lowest cost, just kind of a flyer on Kevin Chappell. I know Chappies can tend to get really hot and really cold.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
That's kind of his moniker. But I think that if you sort of zoom out and look at a longer term, great upside. Has won before on the PGA Tour, plays a lot in Texas. There was just kind of a flyer on Chappie because I saw his name just really stuck out to me down there in that $2 range.
Joe's portfolio: Keith Mitchell, Doc Redman, Peter Uihlein, John Pock, Patrick Rodgers, and Kevin Chappell. Must be the Palmetto Championship with those.
No doubt. That's great.
These are listen, these are guys that would have made my portfolio as well. Now, of course, that the IPO is over, but the jock market has just begun, because you can indeed buy and sell shares of these golfers. We often talk all the time buying opportunities for golfers who might be putting below their expectation, especially with weather in the forecast. That's always going to be interesting around cut lines and things like that. So the party has just begun if you are dipping your toes in for the first time. And I think a lot of people are, Joe, because they want to get their feet wet and make sure they're ready to rock and roll for the US Open next week.
Yeah, it's awesome. And shout out to our guy Aaron there, who gave us the nice nod on the great show, and we gave him the Jock Bucks. But it's so cool. Like, we've probably given out like $2,000 now in Jock Bucks, and nobody has gotten $20 twice. It just shows like the amount of names that are joining us here on Wednesday nights and coming along the ride with us. So that's exciting. Like you mentioned, the great part about it is like, this is why golf is the best sweat in sports, because we have 4 full days of wake up in the morning to supper, golf, to kind of sweat this thing out. And if you pay attention to the jock market as you go along, maybe find some opportunities of a guy who had an unfortunate triple but is playing really well, striking the ball but not putting well. Maybe he's flirting right around that cut line on Friday afternoon and you can get him for cheap. So tons of opportunities throughout the tournament. Keep the app open. Pay attention to those bid and ask prices for all your guys. And thanks again for another exciting week.
Let me do a little bit of housekeeping here before we get out of here, because I've got $20 more to give away. And as I do that, go ahead, hit the like button. Thank you very much. Takes you
Please.
about 5 seconds. Helps us certainly along the way. And the final $20 to the Jock Markets is going to Sam. And Sam mentioned this is his first time. So welcome, Sam. Here's an extra $20 for you. Good luck this week. We'll get you all set up along with the other winners. And of course, we will be back same time, same place next week for the US Open. Just a quick look ahead, Joe. How good is Tori going to be?
I can't wait, man. I already have in my head, like, I just talked to Stephen Hennessy about it, like the drone images of Torrey where it like feels like you're hang gliding over these little strips of fairway along the California cliffs is just like epic to see on television. We've got more storylines heading into this thing than you could possibly imagine. You've got Phil still chasing it. You've got Bryson versus Brooks. You've got the Rahm storyline, which I'm sure will catch a ton of steam and be interesting. Like him not only coming back to a place that he won, but coming off of the whole situation at the Memorial. You've got Reed coming back to a place with a controversial victory. Names like Spieth back in the mix, the resurgence. So much good stuff in golf right now. Cannot wait for Torrey next week. We'll see you at 8:15, right?
8:15 Eastern Time, Rick Run Good YouTube channel. And of course, if you have not deposited yet, what in the world are you doing? Go ahead, use the code POWER. It will get you up to a $50 deposit bonus. So you deposit 20, they'll give you 20, 30, they'll give you 30. You deposit 100, you get 50, whatever you want, up to $50 instantly in your account, which goes a long way. Would have bought you 4-ish shares of the third most expensive golfer. So it goes a long way, Joe.
Absolutely. Always does. Pleasure being with you again here, buddy. Best of luck this week and have a great one, man.
Yeah. Follow Joe on Twitter at TorPix. You can follow me at RickRunGood. This has been your Jock Market Power Hour, and we'll catch you next time.